Hello, this is Anthony. Let's walk and talk. Today I want to talk about dehumanization. I know that one sounds like a big one. Why do I bring that up? Well, I've had interactions with folks, over the past several months and whatnot. And I take this, from different angles. When I see dehumanization, what do I mean? I mean the unwillingness to accept that we are all humans and we are all on a journey. We all have problems, concerns, issues, imperfections that we all, experience and try to mitigate throughout our lives. But, when I really bring it down to, the nuts and bolts of where I'm going with the dehumanization piece, is really when I talk to a lot of folks who, and I don't like to pick on anyone, but again, based on our location, I think a lot of folks who are more deeply, I guess, religious, who, it interests me when I hear them have conversations about folks, because it's almost as if they come at it from the perspective of, I'm better than this person, and so they don't take into account anything that person might be going through, struggles or whatnot. I'll give you an example, one that kind of outlines this a bit. Where I currently live, I'm blessed to have a neighbor on each side, and each neighbor has different set of beliefs and experiences in their life. Let's just say that. And one of the neighbors, approached me and asked if I could talk, and I said sure. And they were essentially unburdening themselves of many difficulties that they're experiencing, currently and whatnot. And some of the causations, I guess, of the way they've been feeling and acting, and just really they needed someone to be able to just hold space for them. And so I did, and we had a very deep and good discussion. And I hope that I helped ease their burden a bit, and they walked away with a bit more of a positive perspective in their life. But I bring that up because then about a week later, I ran into the other neighbor out walking their dog, and they approached me, and they wanted to have a conversation about the other neighbor. And this person, clearly not a fan of the other neighbor. A lot of judgments. Oh, they do this and they do that, and so I chose to share that person had been going through some struggles, and didn't share what the struggles were, but that I understood, essentially why that person was experiencing some of the things they were experiencing and feeling the way they were feeling. And the response was not one of empathy or compassion. It was one of judgment, distance. I hesitate to use the word hatred, but certainly I wouldn't use the word love. Now, the reason I bring this up is because this particular neighbor, identifies themselves to be a Christian. And I say that because, on their door, they have a picture of Jesus. In their car, they have, rosary beads and other pictures of Jesus. And, my first thought as we went through this conversation was, your identity is that of being a Christian, yet every single thing that Jesus spoke to in terms of empathy and compassion and understanding, you're using none of it when it comes to this neighbor. Almost like I'm better than that person. And that kind of thing just doesn't sit well with me. It really doesn't, because on this journey you understand, and you begin to understand better as you understand yourself and the world around you, that no one is better than anyone. We're all equal in this. No one is better than anyone else. The ego is what makes that comparison. The ego is what creates that ultimate separation, that ultimate belief that there is distance and lack, and that we aren't all connected in one. And I use this as an example because I started to think to myself, well, am I guilty of this? And, as I started to kind of go down that direction, I started to realize, no, I don't view the world that way. But then as you interact with other people, I can clearly see how, maybe they aren't necessarily guilty of it, but how they are guilty of turning that mirror onto themselves. How maybe by dehumanizing others, they're really kind of projecting, things inside of them that make them feel like they are not worthy or they are not good enough. And I think that part is one of the hardest things in this journey, because this illusion that we're all separate, this illusion that we're all not connected, it's one that allows us to have these a variety of these experiences, yet it's also one that is what creates a lot of the angst and whatnot in the world. A lot of the anger, disagreement, lack of ability to be able to compromise, lack of ability to be able to see, not only your worth, but someone else's worth and value. And, I think it's important to understand when you start considering those things that anytime you start looking at another being in a critical manner, and I don't mean to say having empathy for a situation and saying, oh, I feel bad for that situation or whatnot. No, I mean being critical, like, oh, that person's a jerk. I don't like that person. I don't like that, this or that, or about the person. Anytime you start going that direction, you understand that in some ways that's a projection in some cases of what struggle you have going on inside. And so to recognize that is important, because as you recognize that, then you start to understand that if I'm dehumanizing someone else, I'm also doing the same to self. Now, again, I bring this up also partly because we're in a time where, attaching to things, attaching to labels and identity and those type of things is prevalent everywhere. And you have people who judge other people based on what they choose to identify themselves with. And then they make judgments on that based on what their own views or beliefs are. And I'm not saying that there's, not some markum of trying to understand another being's perspective and then disagreeing with it. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, I don't judge that. If I disagree with it, I'm not judging it. I look at it and I say, that's that person's journey. For myself, it's not my journey. And I can have compassion and empathy and try to understand why they might feel certain ways, but then also understand that's those experiences that they've had are not my experiences. And so I don't, for myself, I try very hard and I don't try to create some sort of a judgment, an interpretation, deeming them bad and me good, or leveling me above them, or them below me. Hopefully I'm making sense with that. So anytime you think about this, anytime you get to that point where you start thinking of other people and you start judging their journey, and think about where you might be judging yourself and why maybe, if you're being so harsh with their journey, why maybe you are really being more harsh with yourself internally, that kind of demon inside of you that you're fighting. But what say you? How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the term dehumanization to begin with, and how it might apply to oneself when you're comparing or judging another being? By the way, if you enjoy this content, please like, share, and subscribe. I am grateful. And until I talk to you again, peace, love, light. Have the most amazing day.